Public session, are we, Evie?
Just checking that for you now. It just takes a moment, Deputy Chair. Thank you. We're in public now, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Evie. Are members aware of any apologies? No. Okay. Item number 2, Chairperson's business. Members, I'd like to extend a happy International Women's Day to everyone in the system. Tabled today is a letter from the Minister of Education extending 2 childcare support funds and noting that the committee has been consistently urging their extension. The committee has consistently called for a comprehensive childcare strategy and in its absence pushed for continuous provision. It's worth noting that the committee has for some time been working to unthink the assumptions that prevent full participation in education in terms of deprivation and special needs, but also in terms of invisible gender barriers. We've shared our research on gender budgeting with the Department, the Assembly Committees, the Women's Caucus and the Minister for Finance. We have spoken to young women about their needs and supported their campaigns for period poverty and flexibility in uniforms. We've engaged in encouraging a more robust approach to RSE to secure and improve important conversations about respect, consent, dignity and diversity. We've encouraged the Department to engage more substantively with the Gillen Review team. We recognise the achievement of its domestic violence notification pilot in conjunction with the Department of Justice and the Department for Communities. It is fitting that today we should receive this letter from the Minister, which conveys extended childcare support. It's also fitting that we can celebrate International Women's Day with the amending stage of our colleague Pat Catney's period provision bill in the Chamber, with a coordinating minister, the Minister for Communities. We worked as a unit to positively influence the passage and coordination of this bill, and I think that was work we can be proud of. We've 2 female members at the table who add significant value. We are advised by many women at work in education, notably the Children's Commissioner, who has a special statutory role in advising us on young people, and to try to exhaustively name all the others would take considerable time. In the words of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, women should be present everywhere that decisions are made. We have before us a female Chief Executive, Margaret Farragher of CCEA, and is open to members to give her and her team a special International Women's Day welcome. Anyone want to comment on any of that? No? Okay, we'll move on to item 3, examinations 2022, and this is an oral briefing from the Council for the Curriculum, Examinations and Assessment. And could I ask Assembly Broadcasting to remove all of the members from the spotlight and add the witnesses? I'd refer members to a briefing paper from the committee clerk at page 5 of the meeting pack, SIA briefing papers at page 3 of the tabled papers, correspondence regarding examinations at pages 20 to 41 of the meeting pack, a paper on SIA's Curriculum Symposium 2022 at page 10 of tabled papers, and a SIA student guide supporting you through your summer 2022 exams at page 7 of the pack. So could I welcome Ms. Margaret Farragher, Interim CEO of SIA, Mr. Michael Macaulay, Business Manager for Qualifications, Tommy O'Reilly, Chairperson of SIA, and Ms. Amanda Swan, Temporary Director of Examinations at SIA. You're all very welcome, and to female colleagues, could I wish you a very happy International Women's Day. Could I advise witnesses that we'll give them 10 minutes to make an opening statement, and that will be followed by questions from the committee members. Thank you. So is it yourself, Margaret, or Tommy?
Yes, Pat.
Yeah, good morning, Pat. Thank you for that lovely welcome. Yeah, Tommy's going to take us through the introductory statement.
Okay. So good morning, Deputy Chair and committee members, and thank you for the opportunity to attend today's committee meeting. In May 2021, the Education Minister announced that examinations would resume in this academic year with adaptations to SIA qualifications. To quote the Minister, a planned return to public examinations is not, however, a return to business as usual. By way of a quick update, since our last briefing to the committee, I'm pleased to report that working closely with schools and colleges, we have already held 2 successful examination series this academic year. In November and early December, over 27,000 students sat GCSE English Language, Mathematics and Science examinations. That's the largest ever November series, and the results were published on the 10th of February. A further 20,075 students sat GCSE Science examinations at the end of February, with the results due in early April. And the team will be happy to provide further details during the question and answer session. So in welcoming this morning's opportunity to provide the committee with a further briefing, not only in the arrangements for the exams this summer, but also we want to briefly mention our recent curriculum symposium and how we're continuing to support schools and colleges post-pandemic. A written briefing, as you say, Chair, has already been provided, provides more detail, and that's already been submitted to the committee. To begin with, I'd like to commend everyone in our schools and colleges and our teaching profession for their continuing dedication and commitment as we all work through these exceptional circumstances. There is evidence that the mental health and well-being of our young people has been impacted by the pandemic, and whilst charged with maintaining professional standards and quality of outcomes, we are also committed to ensuring students are supported this year as we move towards a return to normal examination and assessment arrangements. For many students, this year may be their first experience of external examinations, and a short guide preparing for exams was released in November. We are mindful of the challenges and disruption experienced by our young people, and several measures to support students sitting exams in this summer across a range of CCE qualifications have been introduced, covering assessment arrangements, approaches to grading, and options for those who miss examinations. We've also been continuing engaging with student representative bodies, young people, school leaders, school subject teachers and teaching unions, seeking their feedback and ensuring they have a full understanding of the various adaptations in place to this year's examinations. We also continue to communicate directly with students and their parents through an extensive array of guidance documents, videos, animations, website and social media activity. The most recent guide for students was released on the 9th of February, a copy of which was shared with the committee in advance. All information is available on our dedicated summer 2022 web area. A short survey is currently live to gain an insight into levels of awareness and understanding of the arrangements across key groups. This information will then be incorporated into our late spring, early summer communications campaign to ensure that all stakeholders, and in particular students, are aware of the options and the support available. So let's quickly look at the assessment arrangements where the burden has been reduced as far as possible for 2022. Students will have the option to omit one assessment unit selected by CCE for the majority of GCSE, AS and A-level qualifications, providing students with the option to reduce the number of examinations and assessment they must all sit. We've also reduced the coursework, controlled assessment requirements for several subjects. In GCSE Maths, students have now received examination aids, which set out the formula and equations, reducing the need to memorise and recall this information. Turning now to arrangements across jurisdictions. In considering the different assessment arrangements across the jurisdictions, comparability is central to ensuring equality of opportunity for learners from Northern Ireland in terms of progression to higher education and employment. Whilst we share the GCSE and GC brand with England and Wales, the policy and format of these qualifications has always had differences. For example, qualifications are modular in Northern Ireland, whilst they are linear in England. Modular qualifications provide a degree of flexibility that is not possible with linear qualifications. It allows for themes and topics to be compartmentalised, with distinct units giving the flexibility to identify a unit for admission. This is not possible with linear qualifications. Students taking qualifications by English awarding bodies have been provided with high-level advanced information for this year's examinations, but it still means they will sit the same number of exams as they would in a normal year. A common set of principles have been developed for advanced information. For example, exam boards must ensure that the detail provided is at a sufficiently high level to avoid the risk of answers being pre-prepared and memorised. However, schools in all jurisdictions are being encouraged to cover the full specification to facilitate progression. Let's now look at our approach to awarding grades. We will be mindful of the effects of the pandemic on students and the ongoing disruption to learning and teaching, and we share the wishes of regulators in England and Wales that outcomes in 22 are higher than those in 2019. The judgments of examiners have always played a significant part in the awarding process, and as a measure of further assurance that students are not being disadvantaged, we will ensure that examiner judgment is at the centre of the awarding process and takes account of significant disruption that young people have encountered. The majority of Gcse examiners are active or recently retired teachers, so fully understand the challenges that students will have faced. So what about students who miss exams? We've been working closely with the Department of Education on supporting students who missed an examination in the summer of 22 due to illness or self-isolation. The key objective is to help ensure as many students as possible can be awarded a grade in summer 22 and can progress this year despite the pandemic disruption. The two options that are in place are the missed component calculation. This option is available under the Joint Council for Qualifications Regulations, and it allows us to estimate marks for students who miss an examination for acceptable reasons based on their performance in the exams that they were able to sit. As a support for this year's group of students, the percentage of the entire qualifications that students need to sit to qualify for a missed component calculation has been significantly reduced. The second option is for the student to take an exam during a reserve exam series, which we've introduced specifically for SEA qualifications in summer 22. This option is available where a student misses an examination but does not wish to avail of the missed component calculation. Due to the significant operational implications, this additional reserve exam series can only be provided for all A2 mandated units and for 5 Gcse subjects, those of which have been reduced to 1 mandatory examination. Normally, these students would have to wait for another year before having the opportunity to resit exams. We do not plan to hold an AS reserve series for a small number of students who miss their AS exams and do not plan to continue a particular subject to A2. Arrangements will be put in place to support them. The 68 examinations in the reserve series will be timetabled between the 20th of June and the 5th of July 2022, with the issue of results being as close as possible to result days for Gcse on the 18th of August 2022 and Gcse on the 25th of August 2022. Whilst we collectively address the impact of the disruption in our education settings because of the pandemic, it's critically important we do not lose focus on the wider challenges facing education and how we continue to implement the curriculum in Northern Ireland. In early 2020, SEA released the findings of our curriculum monitoring report. We heard that the fundamentals underpinning the curriculum are still sound, and many successes were highlighted, including its flexibility and skill-based approach, which allows many world challenges to be addressed. However, there's further work to be completed, much of which reflects the current educational priorities, such as a First Start action plan. In January, we held a symposium taking stock of the curriculum and staying ahead, which brought together over 160 attendees from across Northern Ireland's educational landscape to focus on our skills-based curriculum with industry, academics and educationists from across several jurisdictions. The committee has been provided further information on the symposium, including links to the webpage. I'd like to again emphasise that our overarching goal is to support students to progress to the next stage of their learning, and that we will continue to support them, their guardians and schools in the months ahead. Thank you, Deputy Chair, for your time, and in bearing in mind that we're coming to the end of the mandate, can I thank all of the members of the committee for over the past 2 years their continuing interest in the work of SEA, and the absence of the Chair himself, but particularly I wish to offer him his thanks and wish him all the best for his future career outside of the Assembly. We're happy to respond to any questions or comments from yourself or members of the committee now. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Tommy, and thanks for your good wishes. And we'll pass on your good wishes to Chris when we see him. Just to kick off, I mean, we're all aware. There's the chair, and I'll ask a question, then I'll hand over to him. There's the controversy that arose over the awarding of grades during the pandemic, and I suppose the big fear is that students who are awarded grades this year will in some way be disadvantaged in comparison to grades that were given out pre-pandemic. So how would you respond to that? Thanks.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you for that question, Deputy Chair. I think we've got lots of arrangements in place this year to support learners who, as you say, have had a difficult 2-year period. So you will know that we've got the optional unit admissions arrangements, which in real terms actually reduces the number of examinations students have to take this summer, which is a real positive. We've had a great deal of support from principals and teacher unions on that arrangement. In addition to that, back in May last year, the Minister talked about generous grading, generous outcomes. And so the approach this year in terms of grading and boundary setting will be to ensure that students who have had a difficult time through the COVID disruption, everything will be done to ensure that their grade outcomes are positive and that they're not disadvantaged.
And Margaret, I suppose the question is, if there is disparity, a noticeable disparity between grades awarded this year and, say, the grades awarded in the year before the beginning of the pandemic, how would you deal with that? Can that issue be rectified? Thanks.
Yeah, I think all of those arrangements will help ensure that students are not disadvantaged. So we're doing extensive work with our examining teams and we call them our top teams, who I have to say have been fantastic working with us, managing the arrangements this year to ensure that everything is done this year, that students are not disadvantaged. So we'll be looking very carefully at performance, and I'm really pleased that having had such a large entry for the November series, we've seen really good performance. So that's really positive, and we'd like to congratulate those students who worked very hard during the November series exams to do so well.
Okay.
Just one extra point to add, Pat, that might give a little more reassurance to students out there. The regulator for Northern Ireland has been really clear about sharing their view, in line with the regulators in other jurisdictions, that they would wish to see outcomes to be higher than pre-pandemic years to allow for the significant disruption and interruption to education that students have had over the last couple of years.
Okay, thanks for that. And I suppose that's on a sort of broad general level, that question, drilling down on the more sort of individual level. And the written briefing you gave to us was taking account of student absences through illness, isolation or bereavement. But I don't see any mention in that of teacher absence through illness and lost teaching time. And how do you marry up those two separate issues? And are they going to be taken account of in any sort of overall view of grades that are awarded? Thanks.
Okay, well, thank you for that question, Deputy Chair. If I make a start. So I think, going back to last academic year when we were discussing the arrangements for this academic year with principals, teachers, teacher unions, there was agreement that unit admissions, was the best way to manage any future disruption that we might have So at the time, there were, many schools that felt that they, may not need to take advantage of the unit admissions because they weren't experiencing any disruption. So the really good thing about having had the unit admissions agreed upfront and early in May of last academic year means that everybody's had clarity on what is the mandatory content. We've been able to plan for that. And then we've got enough scope within the system that for those schools, those teachers that have faced disruption in discussion with students, they can take advantage of those unit admissions. And that's in addition to the other adaptations that have been made to specifications. So I think colleagues on the committee know that we have regular engagement with principals and teacher unions to ensure that the arrangements are working for them. And I'm very pleased to say that the arrangements do appear to be working, and that's a real positive. And I think, we all hope that we can continue on this really positive footing into the summer series.
Okay, thanks for that, Margaret. I'm going to hand over now to the Chair, Chris Little. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat, and apologies for that delay this morning, and thanks very much for the good wishes, Tommy, much appreciated. Questions from me then, I'll just get into them. I realise we're tight for time this morning. Can I ask how precisely you're addressing the concerns of students who have had reduced teaching time due to staff absence, particularly those covered by non-specialist teachers on a long-term basis? I know that's been asked, but I want to ask that specific question.
Yeah, okay, so thank you, Chair, for the question. So if I make a start and other colleagues might want to come in. So again, in terms of managing those individual responses, I think we're doing everything we can to ensure that all students and parents understand the unit admissions arrangement. It is a positive arrangement for students in Northern Ireland. I think we're the only jurisdiction that has in real terms reduced the number of exams that are being taken, which frees up time to focus on the mandatory areas that students will be assessed. So that is a significant support. We're also, on an individual basis, helping centres as much as we can in terms of our subject support that we can provide to ensure that there is seamless coverage to schools where they are experiencing any issues with absenteeism.
Can I just, yeah. So Chris, also as well as part of the contingency arrangements that we have in place this year, we actually explored a facility which we were referring to as a COVID tariff. And that was really to see if there was any way that we could acknowledge disruption to both teachers and the students that they would experience over the course of the last 18 months when awarding grades. Now, there was a huge amount of administrative work that would have been required from the teaching profession as well. And when we shared our proposals with principals, they weren't very keen on it. Now, the amount of work that schools have actually done to try to ensure the successful delivery of specifications this year has been exceptional, and they have been really creative in the solutions that they have brought forward as well. For example, amending timetables and whatnot to ensure that there is no interruption to the experiences that students are having. Now, in a small number of cases where schools have actually approached us to raise issues about the delivery of qualifications, what we have done is put them in touch with our subject specialists who have talked through the resources that we have available with any substitute teacher, for example, that was available. And if indeed it was necessary, to also point them in the direction of our senior examining teams who were willing to take them through the requirements of the different assessments that we offer. So we have been trying to do as much as we can to try and help schools this year. And just last week, we also were approached by a school who were having difficulty with the delivery of a qualification. But as I say, the procedures we have in place, our willingness to support them, has been very well received.
Okay, and why has optionality not been offered for GCSE geography in keeping with England and Wales?
Do you want me to take that one, Margaret?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, on optionality, Chris, I think both in Tommy's opening statement and the responses that Margaret has provided already, we have set out very clearly what the arrangements in place for assessments in CA qualifications are for the summer series. We were the first jurisdiction to announce the arrangements that were in place. They were announced in the Assembly in May 2021, and we did explore a number of options, including optionality, to see if we could provide the maximum flexibility for students this year. Now, because we are the only awarding organisation who are offering, well, we're not the only awarding organisation offering GCSEs here, but because we're the only one that's based here in Northern Ireland and we are regulated by CA regulation, we were able to work with the department to maximise the flexibility that's offered by unitised qualifications. That is not something that's open to the awarding organisations in England, where the GCSE qualifications that they offer are linear. So we believe the approach that we have in place is appropriate. It maximises the flexibility of those qualifications, and it has been well received across the board.
Can I just add to that as well? Looking at our entry figures, which are now on for the summer, over 90% of candidates are actually availing of that optional omission for GCSE geography on current entries.
Yeah.
Okay, and will teachers be provided with advance notice of exam content to aid prep in light of COVID disruption?
Shall I start with that one, Chair? So the arrangements in Northern Ireland for CA qualifications are unit omissions. So as Michael has alluded, the other jurisdictions are really quite envious of us that we do have a unit structure that we've been able to implement unit omissions, because it is a simple and easy way for students to understand what the arrangements are. So there were lots of issues raised with optionality, which is kind of options within papers. That can be really quite challenging for significant parts of the student cohort. Similarly, there are issues with advance notice of topics. So because all of the qualification does have to be covered, it's very difficult to say what isn't going to be covered, and exam bodies in other jurisdictions, so for example the English awarding organisations, have had to be really careful to ensure that they're not giving away the questions, but are also ensuring that they don't suggest something isn't going to be in the question paper, which could be a really good, reasonable answer to a question. So advance notice of topics does have its challenges, but because other jurisdictions don't have the unit structure that we have, it was their only way really to support students this summer.
And Chris, just going back to that point, in terms of if we're trying to reduce the stress on our young learners, if we stay with the advance notice, then they will end up having to do the same number of exams as they would have done previously. With the unit admissions approach, they're allowed then to drop an exam. So therefore, we are tackling positively the issue around stress for our young learners.
Okay, last few questions from me. Why does reduction in content in subjects vary? For example, GCSE geography has a 20% reduction, I think, and GCSE history a 40%.
Yeah. I'll make a start, and then Michael can come in. I guess it's really important that all schools, and we know they are absolutely endeavouring to do this, try to cover all of the content in each of the qualifications, because it's all in there for a really good reason. It supports other elements of the qualification, and it's important for progression within that subject. The skills development element is also important to transfer to other subjects, at A level. So all of the content is really important. However, because each subject is different, the size of the units vary to ensure that those qualifications and the different subjects are assessed in the most appropriate way for each subject. So that's why the unit omissions are different for different subjects. However, we've taken a holistic approach to this. So looking at this from the perspective of the learner, so a learner who could be taking 8 or 11 GCSEs, the unit admissions policy ensures that their exams the number of exams they have to prepare for are reduced in real terms, which enables them to focus on the teaching and the learning of all of the content as much as is possible. And that was a key argument that principals made to us throughout last academic year to ensure that unit admissions were supported and implemented for this year.
Okay.
Can I just follow up on that, Chris? I think it's very, very important to remind everyone that we did not reduce content and qualifications. What we did was reduce the assessment burden. They're two slightly different things. Our message to schools all along has been to try to cover the full content of the qualification as much, as far as possible in order to aid progression. It wasn't about reducing the content and the qualifications. It was about reducing the assessment burden.
Okay, but that has varied between subject.
In terms of, sorry, I don't follow. Are you in terms of the weight? The weighting of, well, in the vast majority of CA qualifications, Chris, the students are allowed to omit 1 unit of assessment. It's a maximum of 1 unit assessment in each qualification. Now, those units of assessment may vary in weighting, but there was an expectation, and we have encouraged schools to ensure that they still continue to cover the content of those units, even if the student wasn't going to sit the examination in it.
Okay, and why were modern foreign language students not given the option of retaining oral assessment? And have you received significant contact from modern foreign language teachers expressing concern about the impact on the qualification this omission might have?
Will I take that one?
Yes.
Yeah. So for modern languages, then it was an optional omission as well, Chris. So students, it wasn't a forced omission. So to give you an indication of the uptake of the oral element, I mean, at A level, between the 4 languages, you're ranging from approximately 60 to 80% of candidates are actually choosing and self-selecting to do the orals at this point in time. And of course, they can pull out near the time if they need to. And at GCSE, across the 4 areas, 50 to 60% of students have opted to actually take the oral. So the oral is there as that they can do it. We're all geared up to running them in the summer. So it's all systems go for those students. Okay.
Final question from me. In terms of business of SIA, probably a question for Tommy, to be fair. Is there any update in terms of permanent appointment of CEO?
So we're still going through that process at the moment. We've temporarily paused it due to the number of applicants received, and we're currently re-looking at the process at the moment, along with our professional advisors. And we hope to launch it soon.
Okay. Why was the process paused? Sorry, Tommy.
So we took a decision, the panel took a decision that due to the small number of applicants that we received at the time, we decided to pause the process based on our professional advice that was given to us. And the council is currently looking at that and restarting the process in the near future.
Okay. Who took the decision to pause, sorry?
Panel, which is in line with best practice.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you there. Apologies. Who took the decision?
Recruitment panel.
Your recruitment panel? Okay.
Yeah.
And how long has that process been ongoing for then?
Oh, I'm not sure, Chris, the exact time. I think it was launched, the initial campaign was launched in October.
October 2021?
2021, yes.
Okay, so
I'm happy to respond to any of the questions around that.
Okay, yeah, I presume that's something you'll want to resolve with, probably.
We do.
Okay, thanks for that. I'll obviously bring other members in for questioning at that stage, and I think we have Daniel McCrossan, MLA.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thanks, Tommy, and the team. Thanks for being with us. I'll go straight to questions because I have a number of them. The teaching and learning of our children and young people have been significantly disrupted since the outset of the pandemic. I think that's well on record, and I acknowledge that SIA has put mitigations in place to address some of the problems that has been created. Still, in the minds of many, I'm afraid, there remain significant gaps in your provision. For example, while your mitigations have been universally applied to all our young people, some schools and children have been more adversely affected by COVID than others. This is true between schools and indeed for particular children in individual cases due to their home and family circumstances. And again, that's been well rehearsed. What provision has SIA in place to distinguish and allow for the extent of disadvantage at this particular level?
Okay, Daniel, thank you very much for the question. If I make a start on answering it, and other colleagues might want to come in. So again, going back to the arrangements that we've got in place this year, the unit admissions policy, which is optional, enables schools and students, if they feel that they want to avail of the optional unit admissions, they can do so. So again, going back to when principals really urged us and worked with us to pursue that approach, there was agreement that having unit admissions gives the system that space and scope, that if particular schools are facing disruption or students, they can take advantage of those unit admissions. In addition to that, in light of the arrangements this year to ensure that students are not disadvantaged in terms of the disruption caused by the pandemic, and ensuring that grade outcomes are higher than pre-pandemic years. Again, these are all very supportive arrangements in place to support students. I hope that helps answer the question, Daniel. I don't know if any colleagues want to come in and
just further to that as well. Does someone else want to come in?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Daniel, as well, that we did explore a number of options, and I mentioned it earlier on in the briefing, to see if there was a fairer way as well of acknowledging disadvantage experienced by students. And one of those was the COVID tariff. Now, I think when we were looking at it, there was a huge administrative burden associated with it. And it's also important to note as well that here in Northern Ireland, because we have an open qualifications market, other awarding bodies operate here and they offer GCSE and A-level qualifications as well. Now, the other jurisdictions did not, had no appetite to introduce a COVID tariff, so it would actually have advantaged SIA candidates compared to those taking qualifications with other awarding organisations. So there were a number of issues with taking that approach, and I think it's important to note that.
Okay, just further on from another point, will unit admissions work at individual pupil level?
Yeah, they can. In that, it's for students to discuss with their parents and their teachers as to whether they'd like to avail of the unit admissions.
Okay. Just in relation to the various range of problems that were faced by children and young people, some children couldn't take advantage of the digital learning as much as others for various reasons. How is SIA proposing to compensate for this particular situation?
Okay, Daniel, thank you for the question. So I think, again, with the opportunities that the optional unit admissions give us, in that they give that extra time to students and teachers, that they don't have to practice examination techniques for all of the assessments for a subject. They can focus on the mandatory units. I think that's a significant help. I think the other point is, and I think colleagues mentioned it earlier, that our examining teams are made up of practicing teachers. They're very aware of the issues that students have faced. We know it's been a difficult 2 years. They are very supportive of wanting to support these students, through the remainder of this academic year. So we're confident that everything is being done to support these students who, as you say, may have had some disruption to their learning because of digital issues, that they won't be disadvantaged, and that they'll be pleased with their grades in the summer.
Sorry, can I just add one other point, Daniel? We are not expecting students in summer 2022 to be performing to the same level as students in 2019. And on Margaret's point about our examining teams, because they are practicing teachers, they will be aware of those challenges and they will be able to take all of that into account when they're assessing the examinations that we see submitted to us in May and June of this year.
Okay. Well, it's very difficult to predict. We don't know what's around the corner, unfortunately, and anything could happen, as we've seen to date. Just in relation to the uncertainty, quite a lot of staff have been off sick over the course of the last 2 years. It creates some difficulties for finding a suitable substitute teacher for vital exam classes. What happens in that situation if a teacher's off and a suitable substitute teacher cannot be found?
Okay, thanks, Daniel. So again, we've been working with individual schools to help them as much as is possible. There are certain subjects, I guess perhaps because of the profile of the subject, you could see that those have maybe been more affected. And we're doing everything we can, as Michael explained earlier, to support schools, so individual schools, in terms of providing access to all of our resources, having our top team colleagues, arrange support calls with centres to support them through these sorts of issues.
Okay. Just a question that's burning on my mind. Obviously, the difficulties we've had in the past with the use of algorithms when they're used in the exam processes have thrown up quite a lot of problems. Will CA be using algorithms in determining final grades this year? And if so, what will the objective of these algorithms be?
I take that one.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Daniel. I mean, this year, as in every normal exam year, examiner judgment is at the core of the process. So examiner judgment will continue to be the driver for where grade boundaries are set and therefore where outcomes are. At the moment, we're running, each senior examiner has to complete 4 separate training sessions with us this year to make sure that they are in the right space to understand the level of disruption the level of disruption candidates have experienced, and to make sure that they are looking at students, in the context of the disrupted learning that's there. So there isn't a magic number, if that's what you're asking, that examiners have to hit. It will be based on their judgment on the actual students' work in front of them.
So will algorithms be used?
No.
Okay.
That's short answer.
No.
Right, that's good. And Chair, just slight another thing I wanted to cover in relation to budget. In terms of the budget for CA for the coming years, you've alluded to a need for resources for recovery, contingency arrangements, and important developments to support a modern, fit-for-purpose education system. Can you please elaborate on the following? Sorry, my apologies. The necessary contingency arrangements, refreshed arrangements for assessment, appropriate supply of qualifications for the Irish medium sector, modernising qualifications using technology, Fresh Start project, and the transition of young people into careers 14 to 19. So to start, the necessary contingency arrangements.
Yeah, okay. So Daniel, in terms of our work with the department on budget issues, I guess, in terms of supporting the exam series this year, I suppose just to say, the department is being very supportive. I guess everybody is facing budget challenges this year, and we're very aware of the issues around needing to support health. But that said, going into this summer series, we have had challenges in like many organisations. We are dealing with COVID as well. But we're really pleased that, the examining community, again, have been really willing to step forward and work with us to ensure that we have enough examiners to support our important work and to support the additional series that we're running. So everything, is progressing really well to support those contingency arrangements this year. Shall I pause there, Daniel?
Yeah, so the refreshed arrangements for assessment as well.
So Daniel, maybe rather than running through them all, because, like any arm's length body, we're working very closely with our sponsoring department to understand the pressures that we're facing both in year and over the forthcoming 3 years, right? And we've made all of that information available to the department. The department itself is clearly looking across all of its priorities, but at the moment there's no budget set for any of the departments or for their ALBs. So in a sense, we're still in the middle of it. We're a bit of a limbo at the moment, whilst we're going through this process of getting budget set for the next financial year. But certainly we're continuing to work with the department, and we've sent out the information to them, and they're continuing to work with us to support us.
Yeah, I understand the difficulty there, but have you assessed what you need? Are you very clear about what is required to ensure that related are covered?
Yes, yeah, thank you, Daniel. Yeah, we've broken that all down and provided that to the department.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Chair.
Thanks, Daniel. Can I bring in Harry Harvey, MLA, please? Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chair. I'm just wondering, in the unfortunate event of a student testing positive, I'm just wondering how is that policed? You know, from when they would, what's the process of them reporting in, not being checked up on? Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Harry, for that very relevant question this year. So, with all absences during examinations, we follow a process which is called special consideration. So the centre will work with the student that's missed an exam due to illness, which could be COVID related, or it could be due to another reason. And we have an application process. So evidence is required. You know, it is important that we assure that absence was for valid reasons. So those processes are in place every year, and they will apply this year in the normal way. I don't know if I've missed anything there.
No, you know, just to follow up, Harry, on Margaret's point, yeah, as she was saying there, the Joint Council for Qualifications have tried to test the procedures to manage absence from a timetabled examination. As Margaret said, the school make an application on behalf of the student if they themselves are satisfied that the absence is due to acceptable reasons. It's input in a normal way through an interface that we have with schools, and we will then progress that once we receive that application from the schools.
That's good. So it's tried and tested. That's great. And maybe another point I picked up, the sound wasn't very good now, but did you say from the 20th of June till the 5th of July there'd be 68 exams available? Is that right?
Okay, well, so just to explain that point then, Harry, so I think because this year we're doing everything we can to ensure that if there is student absenteeism, students have the option of taking an exam, you know, if they wish to do that because they haven't completed enough exams. We are putting on these extra examinations. So 68 sounds like an awful lot. Obviously, no student will have to take 68 exams, but covers all of the GCSE, all of the GCE A2 subjects, and we have a lot of subjects available, and then a range of GCSE subjects where we're just ensuring that we've got that extra opportunity available in case there is more absenteeism this summer. I mean, at the moment, we're very optimistic, that hopefully students will be able to take, use their main exam and that they won't need that additional exam. But we've spaced them out so that they're taking place about 10 days after the original exam. So just in case we do see additional absenteeism this summer, which could be because of COVID, there's that extra opportunity available if it's needed.
No, that is, it's good that provision's made. No, that's great. Thank you very much for your detailed answers. Much appreciated. And thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Harry. Can I bring in Nicola Brogan, MLA, please?
Thanks, Chair, and good morning, folks. It's great to have you here this morning and get that briefing from you. I have a few quick questions. I'll go straight into them. I suppose we know that children and young people have endured a lot over the last couple of years throughout the pandemic, and we know as well that they've had like increased anxiety and stress, and that the COVID has had a real impact on their mental health and well-being. I know you've touched upon that even in your opening remarks there, Tommy. But can you tell me what kind of level of engagement you've had with children and young people in adopting this approach towards their exams, and what their kind of views are about this approach and this strategy into exams, please?
Yes, okay. Thanks, Nicola. So if I make a start and other colleagues might want to come in. So we've done extensive work with the NICI Youth Panel, SSUNI, and also parent groups who are really good at sort of obviously feeding back to us the views of young people. Again, you know, the unit admissions option is considered a positive arrangement here in Northern Ireland because it reduces the number of exams in real terms, and students like the fact that if they want to take all of their exams, they can, but they will get, you know, the best grade from either option, and you will recall that we went through that, I think, in our last appearance. So I think the arrangements have been really well received, but we are constantly trying to reach out to students, those student groups. We've also launched a survey recently, which is available to all to complete, to check that everybody does understand the arrangements and to check that our information is clear and understandable. We also did a lot of work with Pure Mental from the summer of last year to ensure that our guidance material, which we, you know, sometimes fall into a trap of writing for teachers because then they're more used to our arrangements because many of them are examiners, just to make sure that all our student-facing material is really clear and easy to understand. And we're constantly trying to refresh our frequently asked questions and answers, again, based on the engagement that we have with the different student groups. We're also keen to set up our own student group moving forward. So we're trying to get, we are getting the advice of the NICI Youth Panel on how we can do that. So, you know, that will be one positive thing, I think, that comes from COVID, which has been difficult.
Thanks for that, Margaret. I'm really pleased to hear that there. I think that's a really positive kind of step forward, and I'm glad that you've worked with those groups, the likes of NICI Youth Panel and the Secondary Student Union Group and Pure Mental have done such important work, especially throughout the pandemic. So a lot of them were created during it, actually. So I'm really pleased to hear that you are doing that, and you're dead right that kind of communicating to students is vitally important as well. It is not been written with teachers in mind or with us in mind, that is there for students. So the other thing I want to ask them was what kind of engagement you've had with teachers. I know, and school leaders. Not obviously you will have had to have a lot, but can you kind of go into any detail on that there and how, again, they have maybe kept in mind the mental health and well-being of students and their increased anxiety going into exam times, not there, and the fact that it'll be even increased even more because of COVID and that, and because of like the interruptions to their learning. So what the engagement you've had with teachers and how that they've incorporated that aspect into this approach?
Yeah, okay, that's a really good question. Maybe I'll start and maybe bring in Michael, because I guess we we do focus a lot on the principal groups, because I guess we're kind of cognizant as well, I suppose, that the principals are sort of also juggling their teachers' well-being and sort of mental health as we sort of get through the arrangements of COVID and manage all the disruption that we've had. So you'll remember that last year we were meeting fortnightly with the principals because there was so much happening. We're now meeting with them monthly, and we take them through all the arrangements as carefully as we can and in as much detail as we believe they need. And we make the slides available and encourage them to share them within their schools to explain the arrangements. And through our regular engagement with the Children's Commissioner, who would have on occasion had to feed back to us that students were feeling anxious about arrangements, we would we would feed back those messages to the principals to ask them to encourage teachers to sort of be sensitive. Sometimes there is that difficult balance between, inspiring and motivating students to work hard and then making them feel really anxious and nervous, about taking exams in the summer when perhaps they're not familiar with exams. So I think that's worked really well, and we've been able to relay the messages in that way. In terms of direct contact with teachers, Michael's probably been more involved in that.
Yeah, I think, Nicola, in fairness, it has been pretty challenging over the last year to 18 months. Prior to the pandemic, a lot of the engagement we would have had with teachers was face-to-face, so we have had to try to be as creative as possible to ensure that we are providing the support necessary. I think particularly with the different policy changes and now the return to examinations, it was crucial that we ensured that they had all of the information necessary to deliver the specifications this year. So, say for example, starting last year, once the announcement was made on the assessment arrangements for this year, we produced a lot of subject-specific addenda for the schools, a document that covered all of the assessment arrangements. At the beginning of the academic year, then we had we produced a lot of subject-specific webinars to engage with teachers, and also as well we've produced a technical questions and answers document that helps them, I suppose, navigate the different policy changes and the arrangements in place this year. Now, also as well, we do have a team of subject specialists, so our subject officers who would work on an ad hoc basis with schools anyway. They're easily contactable, and they have been working feverishly since the beginning of the academic year, dealing with any subject-specific issues that have arisen, which I think has been well received. And also as well, queries have come in through our helpline, which has been running pretty much throughout the pandemic. So there are a number of avenues that schools have been able to access support from us, either ad hoc or through a lot of the resources that we've been able to provide online. And also as well, at the beginning of March, we launched a number of, we have an arrangement here in SEA where we have a number of subject advisory groups in place for the different subjects we offer. And what we have now done at the beginning of March, we've launched a new round of subject advisory group discussions where heads of department have been invited along to share their experiences of teaching and learning during the pandemic, what their concerns are for obviously the summer examination series, and where they would like to see the subject, and us supporting them in the next year to 18 months. So there's been an awful lot of work done. It has been challenging, but we do think we've been able to reach out to teachers and ensure that they are supported throughout.
Okay, thanks for that there. What kind of feedback have you received then from teachers with the launch of these arrangements? And did you say that their kind of consultation was open in March to kind of get feedback from teachers? Is that what you said there?
The subject advisory groups it's a formal group, Nicola. So there's three sort of big agenda items really. Their experiences to date, their approach to the summer 2022 examinations, and then where they hope to see the qualification or the subject, the direction of the subject go in the next 12 to 18 months. But no, by and large, the teachers have been very welcoming of the arrangements in place for the year ahead. Now, I know Chris alluded to geography. There have been one or two subjects where we have had some queries from schools about the arrangements and perceptions of unfairness, so the likes of geography and mathematics and science, but we have worked effectively with those teachers to explain the arrangements, and in a lot of instances there has been some misunderstandings out there. For example, content has been reduced more in history than it has in geography. It has been about the reduction in the assessment burden, and I think as we've delivered those messages clearly, then schools have been accepting of what it is we've been saying and are broadly welcoming of the assessment arrangements in place for the summer.
Okay, thank you for that. Listen, thanks very much to the four of you for coming here this morning. I suppose I just hope that it does work well for all the students that are taking these exams, and for the teachers and for the parents, because it's a very stressful time for all. So hopefully it does work well. But thanks very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Nicola. A very good way to round this up there, Nicola, recognising the exceptional effort of schools and teachers, and of course learners and parents to navigate completely unprecedented times in terms of assessment. I think that's every member that wishes to ask a question. You guys want to make any concluding remarks before we finish?
I mean, just to say, very briefly, I think, we've really appreciated the feedback and engagement that we've had from the committee. I think it's really helped us, get through this, the set of arrangements that we've got for this year, acting on the feedback that we've had, from the commencement of COVID and the issues that arose in 2020. So thank you very much for that. But also a big thank you again, I guess, to teachers and principals, and teacher unions and the Children's Commissioner who've worked with us throughout this difficult period, been generous with their time and given us support, I think, to try and make sure everything runs smoothly this year. So many thanks to all.
Thank you, and thank you to you, Margaret, and your team for the extent of the work that has been undertaken and the willingness with which you've engaged with the committee. It has been a challenging time, and we're grateful for the engagement and the work that you've undertaken, and wish you well with the assessment period, and wish all learners and parents and teachers navigating that the very best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Clark, can I ask Assembly Broadcasting to remove witnesses and to add members back into the spotlight? And can you summarise any actions resulting from the briefing? Thanks. I think you might be on mute, Evening, sorry.
No, I beg your pardon. So the committee addressed the issues that have come to the committee's notice via correspondence and also via the youth stakeholder event. So the impact of teacher illness and teacher shortage on these pressures that have been adding up in the exam system, and SEA have set out there that the unit omission plans, but when they were made, were an attempt to make teaching as foreseeable, as predictable as possible, and manageable looking forward. And also that there was a subject specialist liaison for teacher queries provided by the organisation. Then the committee had questions about optionality and the difference between the approach in the UK to subject omission and unit omission, and obviously the linear system creates different challenges there. But really it's the percentage of reduction is not supposed to be in content but in assessment burden. And SEA's youth engagement about that was that was positively received. The youth engagement carried out by the committee represented, some concerns about, from that cohort, just about whether universities and employers would see them as, as being as robust candidates as previous cohorts, had they been robustly enough assessed and that kind of thing. So I think there was reassurance in that presentation. And then the only thing really, we might represent that in writing back to SEA, on the engagement and reassurance point, but also the issue of the CEO, the permanent CEO appointment. There seems to be quite a bit of prolongation in that process, so the committee might want to ask for some detail on that. Did members have anything else?
Yeah, I'm happy to agree those actions, Clark, and I think it is important that we write to SEA to seek a full explanation as to why the appointment of the permanent CEO has not proceeded, and I think we should write to the department as well to ask why that hasn't progressed also.
Will do,
members, any other issues they wish to add or content to agree those actions?
Happy with that, Chair.
Okay, Clark, takes us to any other business then? Do you want to use that as an opportunity to set out dates and times for meetings this week?
Oh, sugar. So we have a meeting tomorrow morning and we've got a meeting on Thursday morning. Tomorrow morning, the Education Authority leadership team are going to be with us. And on Thursday, we will have presentations. Oh my goodness, let me just check.
When you're doing that is tomorrow 9:30?
We were trying for 9 a.m. for all of these. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I just realised that the Business Committee has kindly scheduled the Integrated Education Bill for 11:30 tomorrow.
That's what we were thinking of, I think, when we went for the 9 a.m. Chair. Does that suit members?
I think it's gonna. Well, maybe we write and maybe we email members just to check. I'm working on the presumption that members may need to be available for the final stage of the Integrated Education Bill, scheduled for 11:30, and I presume that is indicative as well, obviously. So it could be brought forward. I presume the start of business tomorrow is 10:30. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to try and make a start for 9 a.m. tomorrow and try to have the session. It's the one session with the Education Authority clerk, yeah?
It is, Chair. And Thursday then is the Northern Ireland Teaching Council. And also like a kind of subheading of Substitute Teacher Manifesto. So yeah, it's kind of, they're related.
9 a.m. as well then, yeah?
9 a.m. as well, yeah.
Okay. Okay. In terms of any other business from me, I would have raised this at Chairperson's business. Apologies, wasn't able to be there for that. But just by way of update to members, as it relates to education, the members may be aware that the Fair Employment School Teachers Bill passed second stage of the bill's process, and that the Executive Office Committee consultation, which started on January the 31st, closed on Monday the 7th of March, yesterday. The Executive Office Committee has written to the Business Committee to ask that it scheduled consideration stage, further consideration and final stage of the bill before the end of the mandate, and the Business Committee is considering that, I understand, at its meeting today at 1:30, just by way of update to the members. Okay.
Brilliant, thanks, Chair.
No problem. And the date and time of our next meeting, as the clerk has said, is tomorrow, Wednesday, the 9th of March at 9 a.m. The meeting does now adjourn. Agreed? Thank you.
See you tomorrow.